sharing our stories connects us. Listen and be connected. Join us for the Conversation meeting weekly at the intersection of community and culture. Hosted by Mario Nunez and Joe King Carter. And Joe King Carter. Joey, it's Wednesday.
Yeah.
You know what that means.
Hey.
If it's Wednesday and it's noon, it's got to be the Conversation on WMNF 88.5, right here broadcasting live from Tampa, Florida.
We're at the hump of the hump.
I love that. This is, wait, Joey, say that again, but more slowly. Wait. Go ahead, Joey, slowly.
We exist at the hump of the hump.
Thank you. I forgot to put my bell on the desk, Joey, and I had to hit that bell because this is, not only is it the hump of the hump, but it's all downhill now, baby. We're running towards the weekend, right?
Yeah.
We get to Wednesday noon.
Start partying now, folks.
Let's go. Well, easy, because you got to give yourself Saturday and Sunday,
Start partying
at least
now.
Friday and Saturday. Just keep your
Take
clothes on.
advantage of that.
Keep your clothes on. All right, Joey. So listen, as we do each and every week, how was your week, my brother?
Well, my week was actually my particular week
Yes,
in the midst
yours.
of all of this world angst that's occurring was incredibly wonderful.
Good.
I finished a commissioned art piece with my collaborator David Audette, and it just feels so good to move through that process and move
Upon
that
completion, when you finally put that last brushstroke on that, in your case, it's a beautiful diorama. Am I correct? Am I describing it correctly?
Yes, large.
Yeah, a very large installation.
Piece, yeah.
When you finally put that last brushstroke, what does that feel? It's got to be like when an author hits the last keystroke, he knows he's done, man. He puts that last period on the sentence. What's
It's just it's a demarcation in process where you're like, okay, that's done, and now we get to move on. You can't move on while you're in process. So that's I think the best part of it is you hit something and you go, okay, that's done. Now I can go on to the next thing that's going to excite me. So that's the way I see it.
And do you have a celebratory act that you might pop open a cold brewski or your favorite?
Well, there's several of us.
Grigio.
Yeah.
What do you do? Light a cigar?
We'll probably go have lunch somewhere.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
Just I would think that there would be something celebratory to mark that occasion.
We all reveled. Amy Espinoza has been helping us with the project.
Nice.
And others are very involved. And it's a great thing.
So
I'm
listen,
excited.
because I have a shout out at the top of the show. I want to make sure that I get this out. There are a lot of people within city and county government that do yeoman's work.
Yes.
A lot of it behind the scenes, a lot of it necessary. One of the things, this is not a shout out today for animal control. We just got through listening to Duncan's show, Talking Animals. But, when there was money in the budget and there was a need to call animal control for various and sundry reasons, most notably when there was an animal deceased that might be in the roadway and needed to be removed, you could call them and they could come do their work. That doesn't exist much anymore because that's been underfunded and understaffed for a great many years. But there is still an agency that is understaffed, and is underfunded, and it's called Code Enforcement, right?
Right.
And City of Tampa has code enforcers.
Correct.
And as does Hillsborough County. And I met one today, a Hillsborough County code enforcer. Her name is Cindy Gonzalez, and I met her. She was very professional, very kind. She shared the information she needed to share with me. She was in my neighborhood. We struck up a conversation, and I told her. She gave me her card, and I gave her mine. And she saw the card. She said, "Well, what do you do?" I said, "Well, I do a little TV and a little radio." Radio? What radio station? So I know she's listening now. I just want to say, Cindy, thank you for the work you do. These people have to, Hillsborough County is an incredibly large county by square miles.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
People don't realize it. The Sheriff's Department, they got to cover a lot of territory.
Yes.
As do the code enforcers.
Yes.
And these are the people that you rely on when your crazy neighbors got their boat parked in the front yard for weeks at a time and shouldn't be there, or the other neighbor whose dog barks incessantly because the dog's been left out in the yard without food or water. These are the kinds of things, uncomfortable as they may be.
We deal with code enforcement a lot in Ybor City.
Of course.
Yeah. And, anybody who's seen as a bureaucrat is sort of takes it on the nose a little, like, oh, no, that's not going to work. And, these people are just doing their best job that they can do, and that's an important part of our community.
It's a necessary job. So shout out to Cindy Gonzalez. Cindy, Cindy, that's for you.
Thank you,
and
Cindy.
thank you for the work you do. Hey, I'm looking at our guest, and she hasn't stopped smiling since she got into the studio. I know she's got an interesting story to tell, so why don't you take the time to introduce her?
Well, I just want to let everyone know that we have with us today Liz Presley.
Prisley.
And we want to say Prisley so everybody doesn't think she's related to Elvis Presley.
Right.
And
it's an I, not an E.
yeah, and so welcome, Liz.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks
so
for having me.
Let me ask you this question right up front. When did you start being called Liz?
In the fourth grade, somehow I was in a class with like 4 or 5 different Elizabeths and a Bethany. And
Wow.
prior to that, I had gone by Beth. So my family calls me Beth because I have an aunt who is Liz. So in the family, I am Beth and she is Liz. But in this class, like the Bethany went by Beth already, and there were multiple other Elizabeths. And so I just got designated as Liz because someone else felt strongly about the full Elizabeth. And yeah, so then onward, friends called me Liz and family still calls me Beth.
So I happen to think
Not
it's just-
unusual.
it's my little peculiar thing, but I think Liz is one of the coolest shortenings of a name, and that's because people can be Elizabeth, and a lot of times they become Beth. And I guess maybe it's because my generation grew up with Liz Taylor.
Maybe.
And so, but Liz is just kind of this word that kind of pumps out and sounds interesting to me. And you just got to meet a Liz. That's a cool person. And the other thing is, the only thing that might be better is Joseph and Joe, but I'll just save that for another time.
I can see how you'd be invested in that one.
So where did you grow up, Liz?
That is such a good question that I always struggle to answer. My dad was Navy. We moved a ton. I was born in Jacksonville, Florida, but did not recall living in Florida again until I was in high school because I wasn't old enough to remember anything about Mayport, where he was stationed. And so we moved maybe every 2 years or less up and down East Coast, largely going to places. He was on ships, so we were always at a port of some kind.
Port cities.
Yeah.
Port City, USA. That's where you grew up.
Exactly. So I didn't return to Florida until my junior year of high school was in Cocoa Beach.
So where were those cities as a small child?
Yeah.
Name a couple.
Charleston, South Carolina, Newport, Rhode Island, Norfolk,
Wow.
Virginia. I'm sure my dad did one learning station for War College is what I think the Navy called it, in Illinois, in the middle of nowhere, and we're in this tiny farm town called Millstadt, which I think is somewhat close to Springfield.
That sounds like a small
St.
town,
Louis.
Millstadt.
Yes.
But I mean, it was nothing but corn and farmhouses.
Open sky, and open air.
Yeah.
So siblings?
Nothing but corn and
Siblings?
Yes. Older sister, 2 years older than me. We were off and on best friends and worst enemies growing up.
Close in age?
Close in age, just 2 years apart. She's 2 years older than I am. And when we would move somewhere new, we'd be the only friend for each other.
Of course.
But then we'd make friends and then like become enemies again. But then we, would be moving shortly thereafter. And
That's
then it's
an
like, okay, well,
interesting
now you're my
dynamic.
only support system. Let's be best friends again. Yeah.
So I don't think I've asked any of our other guests this question. What is it about, and I think some of it might be obvious, what do you think happens when you're what's been called a military brat? Why are those folks are always different to me? They're sort of aware.
And why do they have to be brats? Why can't they just be
military
children?
kids?
What would be the other term?
Why?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Just military kids. But I mean,
Vagabonds.
Is it because
Military
I love it. You're having
where
to
you're going,
develop a certain level of self-support, or what is
Resiliency.
I mean, I have to say that I appreciate as an adult that home to me was my family wherever we were together, and I was not tied to one city. And I mean, I was probably in the 4th or 5th grade before we lived off base somewhere in a neighborhood, and I made a friend of a girl down the street. And the first question I asked her was like, "Oh, where else have you lived?" Because in my world, it was wildly normal that you've moved a million times at the age of 8 or 9. And she looked at me super confused and was like, "I was physically born in this house. Like, what do you mean, where else have I lived?"
I've never lived anywhere else.
Yeah, and like that concept to me was mind blowing because I didn't even know that was a possibility at the age of 8.
Right.
Let me offer this, that as a retired flight attendant 30 years, that it was, I would suggest to you that 30%, that's roughly 3 out of 10, 30% of my colleagues, my professional colleagues, came from backgrounds much like yours.
Yeah.
Because it lent itself to like you said, home is where you were,
Yeah.
not a particular edifice or structure or town. You didn't identify that way.
Yep.
And these people were the happiest when they were in a transient mode. And who is more transient than a flight crew?
Yeah.
Who is, you know, I mean, you're going everywhere, and even more so than people maritime, because maritime, it takes time for the boat to get there. You
Yeah.
know, flight crew, they're, you know,
Fast.
breakfast in San Francisco, dinner in New York. That's how this works.
Right.
When
So-
I think you get used to knowing how to rebuild a community everywhere you go,
Love it.
and
Great
like so you're like,
survival
I know
skill.
the 3 things I need to do to make friends and plug in.
That's
and
so smart.
And I loved the idea of being able to reinvent myself every time we moved. And if there was something I was like, oh, I didn't like falling in with this crowd, like I'm going to be a different
Wow,
version
you
of
don't
me
think
in the
about
next
those
place.
things, Joey.
That's
You
what.
don't
That's the
think-
reason
yeah.
I asked the
That's
question.
a great,
Yeah.
great.
And it
What a
also
life skill.
probably, it changes probably your communication skills, because you're having to interact with
Southeast to
If you live
northwest.
in one place your
Yeah.
whole life, you're interacting with the same people every day. But if you are moving, you're having to interact with all kinds of different people, right?
Absolutely. I mean, so when my sister and I left Charleston, we were still early elementary. I was maybe kindergarten, first grade, and it developed a Southern accent. And then I think we moved, I'm going to get this wrong, I'm sure, but we were in like Philadelphia or Newport, Rhode Island. And so I think, you know, showed up with this Southern drawl that we had learned in Charleston and then got made fun of it for it there. And so then we're like, oh, nope, got to change that. You know, so I think you just see so many different parts of the country and
Sure.
the norms
It's a
of
great upbringing. A lot
those
of people that
areas,
don't
yeah.
have that experience think that it's kind of a little off-putting because
Sure.
you're always unbalanced. And no, but it's just the opposite, man.
Yeah.
You learn to be nimble and
Yeah.
you learn to be self-reliant. And then, of course, the chameleon component of all this is beautiful. So
Yeah.
I would suggest that also maybe some actors, thespians come from this environment as
Sure.
well, because
All
you're
kinds of
constantly,
people. Yeah.
what a great opportunity to be able to reinvent yourself.
Yeah.
But I think you get that self-awareness of like when I walk into a room or a new community, like how can I read it? Like where are the popular kids? Like what is the norm
There you
here? Like who is on the outskirts and where do I want to fit in? And you have to learn how to make all these decisions.
Right,
which I think are really great.
You're becoming more empathic because you have to read the room.
Yeah.
You literally have to read the room. And the reason I asked you that question, and I can already immediately in the moments I met you sense it, is that these people that grow up as military children are always, I don't want to say smarter, but faster. They kind of
Maybe.
get it quick.
Yeah.
You have to get
your
it
vital
quick.
skills, baby.
You make best friends fast because you know, like
You might
in
not be here 2 years
18
from
months
now.
to 2 years, it's
Right.
going to be gone. I think the flip side of that, though, is I didn't learn until adulthood how to sustain long-term friendships, or like how do I live in the same community and reinvent myself over and over again, or am I continuing to do the same behaviors because I'm like waiting for a move to make the change, or like what does it look
okay.
like to grow in community over 20 years? And I never knew what it felt like to
Roots.
stay in the same place for that long until like I've been in Tampa maybe 15 years now. And it's been hard, and I've been self-reflecting lately on like what are the things that I'm still doing that don't serve me, but the habit is so deep, and I'm waiting for the excuse of moving to reinvent something
Because
about
then
my
it'll
life.
be easy.
Yeah, because it is the easiest to like just shed that old version
Reset.
of you. Yeah.
Reset.
Hit
Yeah.
the reset button.
Yeah.
And nobody's the wiser. You don't have to have a hard conversation with a friend of like, hey,
Why
I don't
this
think
happened
this
back
friendship
then?
is like a fit. We've grown in different directions. It was just like, catch you later, I'm out. I'll try and stay in touch.
Peace out.
Yeah.
So you're going through this
great.
experience and you're reinventing yourself, and then what happens next? We're in high school, let's say.
Oh, gosh.
What are we studying? What are we
kind
doing?
of girl were you?
Yeah.
What kind of young
Were you a
woman
hottie,
in
too
high
hottie?
school?
Oh
Were
my
you
gosh.
an athlete, cheerleader? Come on.
I probably was just like desperate to fit in most places because like being the new kid was rough. So it's like you want to fly under the radar as soon as possible. I would say something that carried me through is I started horseback riding in 4th grade, mostly because I was having a lot of behavior issues in the classroom. I was a kid who didn't respect a teacher unless they respected me first. Or if they didn't do what they said they were going to do, I could see that quickly and then was like, oh, I'm not listening to you.
And you're 10 years old.
Yeah. And so I remember that I think my parents took me to therapy as a kid, and they were like trying to figure things out. And they're like, she works better with positive reward than like negative consequences, because my mom would threaten to ground me, and I'd be like, I love reading. Great. Send me to my room. I can't wait to read every book on the bookshelf there.
Yeah,
like I will be happily silent for 12 hours straight.
Just to be able to be sent to your room. Yeah.
And so I was a hard kid to discipline. So they found something that most 8-year-old girls want to do, which is ride a pony. So I started taking horseback riding lessons. But fell in love with it, and like the discipline that I learned there and navigating horses, and carried that on as we moved and would find new places to ride, and got pretty competitive into it. And so that kind of carried me as a through line from place to place.
Interesting. You have that in common with Jessica, our director and board op here. She's a horse person. So okay. So you're in high school and you're doing that, and then sort of what happened? What is it? What are you becoming interested in doing?
Yeah. So I had
as you launch toward adulthood or college.
Yeah. I had this hard break in sophomore year of high school. So we were in the Northern Virginia area. My dad was a contractor working with the military. So government contractor, was occasionally in the Pentagon, but the year was 2001. So that was the fall of my sophomore year of high school. And my parents had this kind of midlife crisis after 9/11. We're like, we actually don't want to live inside the Beltway in Northern Virginia in this high-paced, high-stress world. I didn't have the context of this at the time, but the high school I was going to was incredibly high performance, produced a ton of national merit finalists. It was super competitive about what college you're getting into, and everyone's looking at Ivies and expensive. And I actually had a pretty low GPA because I missed more school than not riding horses and competing.
You just wanted to ride your horse.
Yeah, exactly. And so my parents moved us after that year, down to Florida. And they moved me because my sister graduated that year, and my parents shipped me off to Cocoa Beach to live with my aunt, who was a teacher at a high school down there, because they knew they wanted to move to Florida, which is where both of them are from, but weren't quite sure where. So sent me to start school, and they sold the house and packed everything up and looked for jobs and all of this. And I had no idea why, really. At the time, I was super angry at them, but I look back and appreciate that, this last kind of reinvention, I became a straight-A student.
You found it.
Yeah,
you found yourself.
Reflected more on the things I enjoyed doing that were academic, cared more about going to college. I was super angry about stopping horseback riding. Because I just kind of fell off after a while down in Florida. But that break of interruption helped me reevaluate, I think, my priorities as a junior, senior in high school. And then I also got college partially paid for with Bright Futures down here in Florida. And
Thank you, Bright Futures.
And so that was an interesting transition that at the time I had a lot of anger about. But now I'm pretty glad it happened, because I don't know where I would have ended up.
And where was this community you moved to again?
Cocoa Beach.
Cocoa Beach, okay.
Yep.
And so you're in Cocoa Beach High School. Now we're going to go to college.
Yeah.
What's happening?
So I think I spent a long time terrified that the next decision was going to define the rest of my life. And so I think teens and 20s,
that's interesting that you would say that.
Feeling like the next decision is going to determine the rest of my life. I don't feel that way about life now, but at the time I was terrified to choose where to go to college. And so my mom decided for me. And I had gotten a scholarship offer to go to Stetson University. And so went there for my freshman year because I didn't know where else to go. I had applied to a handful of state schools. And
DeLand?
In DeLand. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So went there for a year, and I think it was a great experience. Ultimately ended up transferring to UCF in Orlando. But made that decision, became an English major because my mom wanted me to be an English major. And I had always been torn between English, creative writing, journalism, and like wanting to be an equine vet. And so I think when I made the break with horses, I made the leap into like the English and creative writing. Yeah. I also had a biology teacher that like ruined science for me early on, and made me feel like girls can't do science. And
shame on him.
Shame
on him.
Yeah.
Because really and truthfully, I had a biology teacher at Hillsborough Community College. At 8 o'clock in the morning was the class, and who wants to be listening to biology at 8 o'clock in the morning when you're 18 years old? But you know what? This cat. He loved his job, number one. He loved teaching biology, and he made it so compelling, and he broke it down. He was an excellent communicator. So I get it. It can go one way or the other. It can either drive you towards it or drive you away from it.
But you can't be a very good teacher if you think that if women can't do something. Anything.
Agreed. Yeah.
No,
I mean,
100%.
he was definitely a teacher who.
We're still celebrating women this month, right?
That's right.
We're still in March.
We're
That's
still
why
there.
you're here, Liz. That's why you're here.
Yeah, we are celebrating women, and that point should be made that absolutely someone believes the women
Super
can't do something. They
disrespectful.
shouldn't be in the
Super
teaching
disrespectful.
profession, in my book. So go ahead.
Yeah. So dove into English after that. Became an English major. Also, I learned that I could just read a book really fast and write an essay on it. And like I could write an essay argument about anything. Multiple choice questions, I could talk myself in or out of the right answer in a heartbeat. But like you give me an oral exam or an essay and I could talk my way through it.
That's beautiful.
And so just followed that path because it felt easiest at the time. Had some great creative writing classes, leaned more into poetry, and... Yeah.
What a skill, though, to be able to say, I'm just, at an early age, I was just always able to read really fast with great comprehension. I was able to give back, write a pretty comprehensive report, not to use that word too many times in one sentence, but, about what I just read. Some of us read as if we're reading a table read for a new sitcom or for a new motion picture, slowly with a lot of emphasis, and that's, I kind of go into that category. So if it takes you that long to read something, either you get frustrated, you get bored, and sometimes, man, if you fall asleep, if you associate sleep with reading, that's a real bad day.
Yeah, but
that's
reading
not your
was
reality.
my escape. I mean, especially moving all these times, there's long periods where you have no friends or you're, at grandma's house for the summer waiting to like move into the next duty station. And then books was what I had. So like reading was escapism for me. Like I can binge books like nobody's business the same way that you might.
Videos.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, reading early and reading often eventually develops a skill. And that's where fast readers come from. I mean, there might be some neurological thing.
That is spectacular,
that's
Liz,
it.
that you had that experience. And a lot of people, Stephen Colbert talks about how he was a big reader as well when he was a kid. 10 years old and just like couldn't get enough. I couldn't get enough chasing a ball. If the ball was bouncing, I'm chasing after it. Much like how you felt about horses, probably. If it had 4 hooves and it was running, I want to be on its back.
Exactly.
Right. So you're in college?
Yep.
We're doing English, and then what?
We're in college. We're doing English. My minor was
UCF.
German because when I was horseback riding in Virginia, I had a trainer who was German, taught me some German. I actually went to a barn in Germany when I was 15 to like work for the summer, 4 or 5 weeks. And so like had some rudimentary German. So studied it in high school, had to have a language in college. So chose that as my minor because I was like, oh, these classes are fun too. And then ended up studying abroad a lot. And so was in Orlando, met some great lifelong friends there. And then also, pivotal moment was studying abroad to Germany, spending at first like one summer and then later one semester. And then after school altogether, like spent an entire year teaching English in Germany.
And what's the best thing about the German language? Give me your high point.
I think it's
what do you like about
super similar to English. And to me, it follows a lot of rules and is consistent. And when
as
you
do the
look
Germans.
at it, it feels obvious. And maybe this is just because I had exposure to German from a young age of like, German feels obvious to me when I'm trying to work out what a word means or how to conjugate a verb. So that's what I
Grammatically,
enjoy
it
about
fit with your personality. You had
Yes.
exposure to it because
Yes.
German is not... an easy language to conquer, conquest. You know what I mean? It's
But it's in this Germanic circle
It's
of
so
English.
similar to
If you're
English
there- yeah.
in many ways
See,
that like when you make that link.
I'm the other way.
You
Joey.
have Spanish.
My ear is exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have Spanish, which is in the Romance language category.
Yeah.
And those are in different places. So I can imagine German being a lot easier to grab
Yeah.
for an English speaking person.
Yeah.
And so you're doing all of that, and then what happens next?
Yeah, so finished my bachelor's at UCF and thought, I'm not nearly grown up enough to have a real job. And I also looked at starting salaries of real jobs and I was like,
How old are you? Not old enough to hold a real job?
21. And I was like, I don't feel grown up
Mercy.
enough. And so I was like, well, what do you do if you don't want to be out in the real world? And I was like, go to grad school. And so went to grad school.
Continued education.
That's probably a common motivation.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's avoid the real world.
Yeah, exactly. And as an English major, could get grad school paid for. So I ended up at Virginia Tech. I had an uncle who was a professor in the forestry department, and he, in years prior, had done some collaboration with the English department on some grant writing things. And so knew from a professor there that they had a lot of funding for English students because they needed
Perfect.
someone to teach all the engineers. And so their English department was really well funded. So did my master's in English there. And that's where I started teaching because my focus was English composition, which is really about writing and the teaching of writing. And so I spent 2 years at Virginia Tech doing that and loving being in the classroom and loving what it took to teach college English, freshmen, sophomores, how to write an essay. And instead of thinking about writing as a painful thing with 5 paragraphs, that it's like, how are you communicating? How do you get an idea across? How do you build an argument? And in loving that, so many people hate writing and helping them find at least
The joy in
a
writing.
peaceable relationship
Yeah.
with it, if not a love. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're discovering that you like teaching.
Yes.
And what does that lead to, really? What was that? How was that affecting your feelings about your future?
Yeah, so I think from then on, I was like, oh, I am a teacher, core identity. I am a teacher. I want to do some kind of teaching from here on out. And was a little burned out on grad school as an experience at the end of the 2 years of my master's. And so wanted to take some time off, assuming I would go back for a PhD, because in grad school world, a master's is not a terminal degree. It's a degree you get on the way to a PhD. So in the job market, it's kind of like mediocre options to teach with just a master's degree.
She used air quotes, y'all. You couldn't see them, but she used air quotes.
But I also was having this weird break between feeling like I was in this university where we were talking about community and teaching of writing. And my master's thesis had to do with strategies for, feminist writing methods, which really are classroom strategies, which is really just about breaking the norm. That there's lots of different kinds of learners and there's a lot of different models for how people learn. And the dominant one is this idea that the teacher knows everything and the student knows nothing. And the teacher is the big expert imparting their wisdom to a student. And I really believed in a model where you create meaning together in a classroom and it's a back and forth. And so it was let me go try that out for a while because I don't quite know how I feel about this university situation. So then, again, didn't feel grown up enough to go out in the world and have a real job. So it's
This is
okay,
the theme,
after
Joey.
grad school.
Are you getting a sense? This is the
After
theme.
grad school, what else could I do? And Virginia Tech had a really strong, scholarship office, and they marketed their Fulbrights very effectively. So I
Of which
sent
you
in an
had experience?
application to be a Fulbright English teaching assistant to Germany because you had to have working knowledge of the language, and so I could pass a fluency test.
Sprechen Sie Deutsch.
Yeah, and so they had such a strong department that helped every step of the way with your application that it felt easy to me. And so even years later, I was like, it wasn't that hard to get. They did a lot of the work. So then went and spent a year in Germany at a community school outside of Darmstadt, which is like a university town just outside of Frankfurt. And so was an English teaching assistant for a year
Lots
there.
of beer and schnitzel.
Yeah.
I'm just guessing. Lots of beer, lots of schnitzel.
Lots of traveling on a shoestring around Europe and like the cheapest train ticket and hostel I could find to like see. Yes,
right?
Very fun. I no longer remember how I navigated the world like pre-smartphone GPS map. Like I think I was like printing out MapQuest.
We talk about
from
that
time to time
every week. And there was something that you probably don't know anything about called the AAA used to make for its members called a triptych. And the triptych was this really elaborate map that and it was bound with, and it was fantastic. But before that, if you had a party at some nondescript house because there was going to be a kegger going on, and it's 1973, and you're doing some serious underage drinking. We're not doing underage drinking here, but
of course not.
I'm just saying
the drinking age was lower than 2.
It was 18.
Probably weren't.
It was 18. We were 17 and a half. How did we find that house at night?
Absolutely no idea. Absolutely no idea.
I couldn't do it today. I couldn't reconstruct it, Joey. Let me give a station break here real quick, an identifier, and then we'll come back on the backside. This is a wonderful conversation.
Hi, I'm Kim Burns Cummings, and you're listening to The Conversation with Mario Nunez and Joe King Carter on WMNF 88.5 FM in Tampa.
Oh.
Kim.
Come back to us, Kim. Come back to us. That was Kim Burns Cummings, and she was on with us last week, and it was just a wonderful episode of The Conversation. If you'd like to listen to all of it and hear her compelling story, please check us out in the archives, WMNF.org. Seek out The Conversation. Look at the archives. It was just last week, which was the 18th of March. Listen, at 36 past the hour, you're listening to The Conversation again, reintroducing our guest, Liz Priestley. She's telling us her rather adventurous early story, and we're going to get to where she's doing now.
Yeah, we need to get to the present.
Yeah, we do, because the hour goes fast. But also, let me share with you guys, if you'd like to offer a question, if you've got a comment you'd like to share, I'll give you the number now. It's 813-239-9663. You can send us a text at 813-433-0885. Jessica will take your emails and read them aloud, because she does that real good.
And we have Gabrielle on the phones.
DJ and Gabrielle standing by waiting to take your calls.
Right.
So we don't say operators are standing by. We say Gabrielle is standing by.
That's right, because we're people-powered.
Send us the email, dj@wmnf.org. Liz, what a great story you've got so far.
So you're in Europe, and then what happens next?
In Europe, spending my last dime on traveling, and then call up mom and dad, and spent a long time contemplating if I wanted to stay in Germany, but would have had to do some additional degree requirements again in order to be a teacher there. My sister at the time started having kids, the first of her 3.
She went a different route.
And grandparents started passing away.
Well, she was the number one child, right?
She was the older.
So that's the responsibility of the number one child, typically.
Yes, and she fulfilled it wonderfully.
Your sister's name?
Sarah.
Sorry, Sarah. Sorry. It was your lot in life, Sarah.
No, she knows. It was her job to provide grandchildren, and
hopefully
mine
she's
to provide
listening
adventure.
today.
Liz says thank you, Sarah.
Yes. So ended up coming home from Germany. My parents lived in Tampa, and I was like, Mom, Dad, I'm really broke. Can I come live on your couch and find a job? And,
still
make
resisting getting a real job.
Oh, my God. She's not grown up yet.
Yeah, not yet. And so that's honestly what brought me to Tampa. Is I was leaving Germany with barely a quarter to my name because I had
it was a dime, so at least it's up to a quarter
exactly. And landed on their couch in Tampa and was looking for adjunct instructor jobs, and so ended up at University of Tampa and USF St. Pete campus teaching college English, and did that for probably the next 5 years or more, because Tampa just kept growing on me. I never imagined I would stay here.
Not now, but then.
I am.
Are you 30 yet?
I was 23 maybe when I moved home from Germany.
Wow. As an adjunct professor at 23?
Yeah.
I mean, how much did the students flirt with you? Because I'm, if I'm sitting in your class and you're in front of my class,
I mean,
I
think as a teacher, students are babies, and that is gross.
Okay. See, it's a different time, Joey. It's a different time.
Yeah,
Joey.
but I got to tell you, I had an English teacher in high school I had a big crush on. So
we did too.
It does happen.
We had one that had just graduated from USF. She was but 22, 23 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've got a senior in high school that's 18, almost 19.
Yeah.
Stop it.
You can have a
If you're
teacher.
in the club, you're going to go talk to that person if you happen to think that they're whatever.
Yeah, you can have a
attractive and
teacher
nice.
that's 5 years older than you. There you
Yeah.
go. Easy. But
Yeah.
go ahead.
I
So-
wasn't being sexist or gross, but it's just, I'm wondering how old is she? She's had all these life experiences.
I mean,
and
I
she's
sure
still
didn't
19.
tell my students how old I was.
Yeah.
So landed in Tampa, was teaching, wasn't quite sure what the next move was
Teaching where?
at UT and USF St. Pete.
Go Spartans.
Okay.
So teaching sections of like intro to English, college English at both campuses,
Okay.
because it does not pay well. It's like maybe $2,000 a
Adjunct,
class,
right? Yeah.
and so I had 3 classes at one campus and 2 classes at the other, and so I was averaging like maybe 20,000 in a semester if I was lucky.
Okay.
So was still living at home.
Still on that couch.
Still on the couch.
Yeah, but
So
you do have a
I had a
job.
spare bedroom by then. I did
good.
have a job.
Good.
This is when my mother's strongest hope for me became a job that offered health insurance, since there were zero
Baby, you
benefits
got to get
involved.
serious at some point. Yeah.
And so adjuncted for quite a time, but early on in Tampa, I went to an open mic and encountered spoken word poetry for the first time.
Now we're getting serious.
And I feel like this was like a meant to be moment, because that became a huge cornerstone of my life, was writing and performing poetry, meeting other poets, getting to travel with poetry some, and then began volunteering with a nonprofit called Heard 'em Say Youth Arts Collective that I am now the executive director of. And so started volunteering with them in like 2012, 2013. And
Let me ask
Yeah.
you, what if you can go back and remember that very first flush of seeing spoken word poetry? What were your feelings about that like? I mean, what did that really?
Yeah, I mean,
Changed your DNA.
I
Changed your
very
DNA.
vividly remember the first open mic I went to, because I was teaching at UT and I would go to a pita pit down the street and grade papers over lunch because I had this really big lunch break. And there was a guy that worked at the pita pit who ran an open mic in St. Pete called Four Poets. And so he just kept telling me about this open mic and I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like, stop talking to me.
Don't bother me.
And then eventually I had no social life in Tampa yet. And I was like,
Anywhere
you know
you're
what, maybe let me unearth that card that guy gave me and like try out this open mic because I don't have anything else going on. I'm like,
Sure.
24 living with my parents.
Sure.
So went to the open mic and the feature was a woman named Ebony Payne English. And I just remember being struck in the audience that like, this is what poetry is about. This is what art is about. It's this like human connection to emotion. And I didn't have your lived experience, but I'm feeling the emotion so deeply that you're sharing that I can draw connections to times when I felt similar emotions,
Yes.
even though they were different experiences. And I think like I had this academic background in creative writing, but had like kind of waffled on having teachers that made it feel great or not so great, and like the criticism
The
and
emotional
feedback
component might have been
yeah,
missing.
the emotional component was missing for me. And I was writing things like in Orlando, Florida, about how the violence against women was increasing drastically on campus. And, there was a young man like murdered in the neighboring apartment complex, or there was like a young man who was going door to door in my apartment complex, like raping women at gunpoint. And, it's like these were the things I was writing about in my poetry and getting like negative feedback from teachers and classmates of like, it should rhyme, or like bring in nature metaphors. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, sure. Then maybe poetry's not for me. Make it, but
The
exactly.
meter ain't working for me, baby. The meter ain't working. Yeah.
So I was sitting in this open mic and heard Ebony perform, and I was like, this is what I've been missing from poetry. Like, poetry is my jam. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, this is incredibly
How cool.
powerful and like world changing. And it felt like just all of the pieces started coming together.
And because you had been, if I may say, my summation of this is you had lived in the mind and heart mostly, but in the mind a lot because of your writing.
Yeah.
When you become a performer, you are forced to take your emotions out of your heart and put them out in the world, display.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter if it's acting or poetry slamming or whatever
Singing.
it is. You're having to put it out there, and that's what was happening to you. I suspect you was like feeling that.
I think so. I also think that art gives us this like catharsis of emotion, and so it like creates a safer space to experience emotions rather than like in the heightened moment of when they happen, that we
Yes.
can work through them later, and that we can also like share them publicly.
Yes.
Because so often emotions get relegated to the private or the embarrassing, or they keep that to yourself. And so art, and for me, poetry and spoken word, like helps bring that out into the light, and we can share it together.
Well, our society really wants us to hide our feelings.
Yeah.
You succeed more in our society by hiding your feelings than sharing your feelings, and that's a mistake.
And I think the magic comes in. Agree with me, Liz, if you shall.
Yeah.
I think the magic comes in that vulnerability when you set out there and you say, you know, it may work, it may not work.
Yeah.
But here we go. I'm going to share this, and then that's where you get the feedback from the audience. Tell us some of the things you're most proud of that you've accomplished since you've been the executive director of this incredible group of people.
Gosh. Well, I took it over in early 2020. And so then you can imagine that
That's a hot
things
minute.
happen in
That's
the
a
world.
hot minute, dude. 6 years.
You know, but it was also like right at the
COVID.
start of COVID. And this was a nonprofit that we had been putting together a traveling team
Zoom
that
jams. You're
competed.
doing Zoom jams.
And so we would go to a summer festival called Brave New Voices, and, you know, we're set to fundraise and go compete at that festival. And of course, all of it got shot down. And so I think it's really been this lesson in constantly reevaluating, listening to what young people are asking for, and then responding accordingly and saying, like, are we doing things because we've always done them this way, even if they no longer fit the current need or culture, or like, are we being responsive to what people are asking for? And so I think one of the proudest things is launching a program called Words to Lead By. And it was in response to young people saying, you know, poetry is great, but there's a lot going on in the world, and I want to connect my art to talking about what's going on in the world and then advocating for the things that I care about. Like, how do I make this platform something that can shift my community? And so it was about building leadership skills, conflict resolution skills, and like combining that with arts.
So your background in academia. So are you listening to this, Joey? 'Cause this is fascinating.
Oh, absolutely,
So
yeah.
so what I picked up on just now, as she was describing the different nuanced skill set that was required to her to lead this new organization that now she
Yes.
sits atop of since 2020, was exactly almost verbatim. If you listen to the tape, go back. Can we play the tape back? You listen to the tape because it was everything that she had done in her life.
Yes. Yeah.
To lead her to this moment, to
Yeah.
be where she is and who she is.
Yeah.
Are we close?
Absolutely. And I think it's been so intentional that the things have prepared me for the next moment, or, you know, even decisions that I made because I didn't know what else to do at the time led me to the next thing, you know, whether
Right.
it was coming to Tampa
That delay,
to
I'm
like
not
live on
ready to
mom and
do
dad's
this. I'm
couch.
not
Or
ready to do that.
Yeah. Like you know, and I do think all of that has given me the skill set, the tools.
100%.
Well, you know, I would say, this is what I would say now as a sort of an old guy with some wisdom, is that life is...
I'll say.
You are always through intention, you are always preparing yourself for the next experience. You just sometimes you
Right.
don't realize it.
Yeah.
And so you are constantly building platforms, either successfully or unsuccessfully, to launch you to the next
launch from-
stage. And
yeah.
that sounds like what was happening.
Yeah.
So as the person who's the director of this, but are you also still
Performing?
writing and performing your own poetry?
So I hibernated for a little bit on writing and performing my own work. But yes, I do write and perform my own work as well. You know, I think that as a creative, you ride this roller coaster of, I love what I'm doing. It's fantastic. I hate what I'm doing. I'm awful
Yes.
at it.
Yes.
I love what I'm doing. It's fantastic. It's the only way I know how to process the world. I don't know what I'm doing right now and feel like an utter failure. So, I mean, you know, it's this back and forth. But I think finding the niche of where does my voice and lived experience matter? What stories can I tell? How am I the best person to tell those stories? And like, who is my audience that I am primed to connect with, like based on who I am and what I'm talking about. And I do feel closer to making all of those connections than I ever have.
And so your life has always had this connection, this touch to women and women's issues in the
Yep.
world.
Sure.
Talk a little bit about that, because we are in Women's Month here, but talk a little bit about, does that impact your art? Does that impact, I assume it does, but
Or how much does
Absolutely.
it? How much
but
does it?
what is that about in your life now?
Yeah, deeply. I mean, I think that a lot of my early art was finding ways to express long-running frustration that I didn't know how to pinpoint until I said it out loud. And then an audience might say, oh, wow, like I didn't know how to put words to that experience. But yes, I felt that way too. And I think that's been some of the most affirming part of being a performance poet is performing a piece about my lived experience as a woman, this like constant agitation of wanting to be treated like a person, but instead treated like a sexual object, or, you know, constantly being seen as less than what you might be capable of because someone's attracted to you. And you know, so that fueled a lot of what I was writing, or like, you know, my greatest fear growing up that I was instilled in me was like the worst thing you could ever be is pregnant and unmarried. That was like, you know, all other things aside, like that's the worst thing you could do as a young woman. And so like this is what was fueling my writing. And so when I was performing pieces like this, you know, would have women come up to me afterwards and say, thank you so much for saying that out loud. Like I felt exactly the same way. That's been my experience too. I just didn't know how to put words to it.
So we've got about, you know, not even a little bit left in show.
Yeah.
And we didn't plan for any of this because, you know, sometimes we don't. But I would like to know do you have anything committed to memory that you would like to share with us to give a living, breathing example of what you've been describing to us. Now, listen, if you're not ready to do that, that's fine. Because we ask our guests sometimes to perform, and if they're not ready, they're not ready.
Right.
You know, singing at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning is not an easy thing to do. But I'm just saying, if you would like to share something, I personally would love to hear it. And
Sure.
you know, that the floor is yours, my love. The microphone is yours.
Yeah, I'm open. I mean, I have plenty of things committed to memory,
Would you like to do
and
one?
you know,
Would you
stay
like to-
mostly ready. So yeah, I'd be happy to perform a piece for you.
Listen, y'all.
awesome.
In case you didn't know this, Liz don't need to get ready because she stay ready. She stay ready. The floor is yours.
Yeah, perfect. So I'll share this poem that I rememorized, which is a professional poet word, where you had it once memorized and then you had to make sure you still had it memorized
Oh, I like that.
for a performance.
I'm gonna write that down.
Out in Gulfport. That a friend of mine, Gemini Fox, hosted just a week or so ago for Women's History Month. And the poem is called Suicide Note. And it was really just about looking back at this folder of poetry I had written in my 9th grade creative writing class that was all like deep and dark and like constantly talking about death and dying. And I was like, what was I so angsty about? And then this poem is the result of like reflecting on that. I wrote my first suicide note at the age of 13. By 15, I had composed an entire notebook. My 10th grade English teacher thought that I was troubled, but no number of parent-teacher conferences could find a solution. You see, I was mourning the loss of my, nerves, little stumble. But no parent-teacher conference could find a solution. You know, I said I'd stay ready, and I apparently was not ready. Let me pull this out and confirm.
Take please, because you've got it. You've got our attention.
I know.
We need to
I
hear
didn't practice
this.
this week.
That's
Well,
okay. No, we did not ask you
we
to
put you on the
practice.
spot a
Yes,
little
we
bit.
did, and
We did.
that's our fault.
I was
we
so confident
apologize.
that I had it, though.
That's okay. That's okay. You find it. You take the appropriate time to find it. We've got time because we want to hear this. This is an example.
Yes. Okay. All right. We're here.
What
We're
lives
here.
in there? You go.
I wrote my first suicide note at the age of 13. By 15, I had composed an entire notebook. My 10th grade English teacher thought that I was troubled, but no number of parent-teacher conferences could find a solution. You see, I was mourning a loss I hadn't yet identified, struggling with an identity I didn't yet understand. Tell me, what does it mean to be a woman? You see, men have continued to call me girl long past the development of breasts or first monthly bleeding, like, hey, baby girl, how you doing? Or, dang, sweet girl, you looking fine. And this only taught me that I was property, something to be wanted, coveted, owned, but I was not my own. I was reaction to teacher criticisms or response to parent punishment, deflection of unwanted attention, but really just craving for self-fulfillment. You see, when I was 6, I measured my self-worth in fireflies, blanket forts, and kisses from my dad. At 8, I wanted to be an Olympic equestrian, but somewhere along puberty, I lost those dreams. You see, by 16, I'd exchanged fireflies for desire shining in boys' eyes, blanket forts for some spindly teenage arms, and daddy kisses for foreign lips of approval. By 17, dreams of Olympic gold medals had morphed into hazy nights spent clutching beer bottles. By 20, I didn't even know me. 2 boyfriends, 2 broken hearts, and too many mouths. Later, I was spending my value on salt and tequila, unrolling body shots on bar tops and letting Captain Morgan steer my decisions. So tell me, is this what it means to be a woman? Where satisfaction is found in the meeting of lips, the pressing of hips, the probing of somebody else's fingertips into places that I didn't know were ever mine to begin with. This nubile body was built for pleasure, its curves meant to tempt, so temptress I became. See, by 22, it was all a game. I could score free drinks with the best of them, whisper smiles into ears and strut through VIP entrances. My eyes were dropping promises my body could never keep, so by 23, the game caught up with me. You see, I was the only one getting played, it seemed. No matter how many men I laid, there were too many empty spaces in my body I'd only filled with self-hate. Too many shadows chasing me as I chased them, wanting nothing more than to be wanted. Because since the age of 13, I have been slowly killing myself with these beauty magazines as blades dragged up my wrists or push-up bra straps wrapped around my neck, fumes of perfume and synthetic desire choking my breath. My manifesto became my poetry. It is the only suicide note that I have ever left. So will somebody tell me, is this what it means to be a woman? But gone is the glow of fireflies. And if I could only find that blanket to cover this skin, if daddy ever knew where this mouth has been, well, it's probably why he stopped giving kisses years ago. Because since the age of 13, I have been mourning the loss of my ability to ever be a woman. And now at 39, I am struggling to decide if I could ever just be. Thank you all so much.
Oh, my goodness.
Wow.
I'm so grateful that I took the opportunity to ask you to do that.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
And I'm so
Awesome.
grateful that you shared.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Strong.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Well done.
So wow, it's hard to come down from that.
Yeah, no, it's really,
But I think that's the goal of art. Like that's the human connection. And that's what I feel so passionate about in sharing art is like that moment of emotional connection.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good
So
stuff.
in these moments left, is there anything else that you want to bring up that's important to you?
Is there an event you want to share? Something
I would say, so Heard 'em Say Youth Arts Collective is turning 19 this year in May. And we have a monthly open mic for young people the last Friday of every month, and it takes place at the Sulphur Springs Museum. And so this Friday is the last Friday of March. And so it starts at 7 p.m., runs from 7 to 9. It is open to the public for audience, but the mic is reserved for just young people 19 and under. So you don't have to listen to a whole bunch of adults like in their ego and think how great they are. Like you just get to, as a young person, get up there and like express yourself. Yeah. So would love to have anyone join us for that. We're trying to put together a slam team that'll go to Oakland, San Francisco area for Brave New
Nationals?
Voices. This big regional or this big international festival. And then the second week of June, we have our Words to Lead by program for young people, Monday through Friday, 10 to 6, who want to do creative arts and talk about leadership skills.
Heardthemsay.org?
Heard em say, like an EM.
Oh, okay.
Heard em
Heard 'em
say.
say.
Yep, heardemsay.org. So heardemsay.org. And all the details are up there.
So look for that, folks, online. Do you ever do anything at the Commodore? Have you been to the Commodore?
I've been to the Commodore. So some
It seems
poetry.
like a natural connection.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
it's-
yeah.
We're very close with the group
Some
there.
poetry colleagues of mine, Dennis Amadeus and Curtis Davis, run a group called Grow House, and they've done open mics and poetry slams there. So Curtis Davis, who helps run Grow House, is actually an alumni of Heard 'em Say and our creative director. So he's part of the leadership team that helps run Heard 'em Say as well.
So as a part of the leadership team yourself, when you say, you can get to say, yeah, Curtis is actually an alumni coming out of our, how does that make you feel?
I mean, I think it's incredible. We have so many talented artists in the Tampa Bay area that fly under the radar, who have gone through this program and are now working back to build it up and also just create more creative outlets in the Tampa Bay area.
And you're just trying to fan that growth. You're just trying to make sure that they continue to be all they can be.
Exactly. Whatever stage we can build, whatever way we can amplify those voices, and let young people know that creative arts is a viable career option, or that even if it's not your day job, that it's a essential to human existence to like be creative, and that there's meaningful ways to engage in creative arts.
When I got up this morning, Joey, I had no idea how special this show was going to be. I had no idea. You know, I knew we were going to meet you today.
Yes.
and I'm glad that I didn't know too much about you, because that impact has really moved me.
Yeah,
Your story
very
is
special.
incredible.
Very special.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. So, should I? May I?
Well, we're right about at that special
We're right
time.
about at that
and
moment.
this is what, listen, we do this show each week with a lot of love in our heart to make sure that our listening audience stays informed and educated and sometimes entertained. I think today they got a massive dose of all three.
Absolutely.
But when shows like this, we have these shows and they end at the time that they're supposed to end, I get kind of sad.
Hey,
I wish we had another hour, Liz.
it would be nice to have a 2-hour
Maybe we
show.
can bring you back
Right.
at some point.
Yeah,
we
for sure.
we could really start doing some major psychiatric work here.
That's true.
if we had 2 hours, if Randy Zimmerman's listening.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, by the way, folks, what you're talking about, Liz, reminds me of this one thought. When our society gets past of all of this stuff that we're going through that seems horrific right now, liberal arts are going to be back, folks, and people are going to be making art. And
Liberal arts major right here.
that's it.
Go
There
ahead,
you go.
Joey. Tell them
All
goodbye.
right. As always, special thanks to Jessica Green, our OG of the board ops. An incredible job. We couldn't do it without you. And then also today we have
Gabrielle.
Gabrielle at the phones, doing a great job. And coming up next, there she is giving me 2 peace signs, is Sam I Am